And if this world doesn't get a hold of self-development and reflection and insightness and therapy and doing the things that need to be done in a healthy way and not detached through alcohol and through drugs and through sex and through eating or through just not listening and the unwillingness to hear people, if we sat around the campfire and listened to people, we could actually realize that we are all interconnected. We all need each other. We are all source to one another. We are all energy to one another. And we're only taking out each other's flames if we don't listen. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Can't Be Uncensored. I am fortunate to have with me today a gentleman by the name of Aaron Brooks. And Aaron is actually a family friend and a parent of a child, of several children, but one of their children during COVID actually came out to Aaron and his wife, Lisa, and the family that he's a transgender. And the reason for our coming together today is because I think this is a really important conversation to have with parents, because so much of the time we hear about the transgender's experience in life, but we don't always hear the conversation from other family members. And though we may, these conversations may be happening in groups and sidebar conversations and in private spaces, I personally, as long as I've known transgender individuals, have never actually publicly heard it through a public platform. So I really appreciate, Aaron, you choosing to join me to have a conversation as the father of a child of transgender and hear, what the process has been for you as a father and and husband and as a parent, and how you have led the way with your family. So thank you for joining me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm so happy that you're doing this. I mean, you couldn't have said it better, I think, as far as the importance of this subject for many reasons, which I think we'll get into. But yes, I'm very, very happy to be here.
Oh, well, listen, I think life in general, everybody would love to think it's easy and simple and laid out. But the truth of the matter is, none of us have control over any of our circumstances. And those circumstances don't have to be horrible circumstances. They are just things. And it's how we figure out and go through it in the most loving, figure-outable sort of way that serves each and every individual in the safest of circumstances. And right. And I think that all starts with the environment and our foundation and our family. If we're all fortunate enough to have whatever family is to people, be it from a blood source or not blood source. So let's go back. You and Lisa are a couple. I'm going to, be specific, but also protective and not specific. You both live in the Midwest. You've raised your family in the Midwest. You have 3 lovely children. You conceived 2 of your 3 children. Your 3rd child you adopted. It's your 3rd child, the youngest child, who was born as a girl and came out during COVID to you guys that she is a he and is transgender. So now he is in the process of you all through all sorts of things, from education, home life, physical transitions, is going through this transition, so to speak. And so are you all.
Correct. Yep.
So when you first adopted, I will say Leo, when you first adopted Leo, and you were happy to have a little girl, I would imagine.
Sure.
And years went on. Did you ever see anything in Leo that would have prepared you for what was to evolve into what is now?
I certainly did. It was never profound, but there were certainly things thinking back that
Mhm.
it didn't surprise me, but I'm not surprised by much. So it wasn't quote unquote surprising. We have another of our children came out as gay when he was 14 years old. Uh,
Mhm.
and that was a very seamless process as well. And I just, I'm certainly not holier than thou, but I just kind of roll with the punches, and there were certain things in Leo's personality that over time seemed to be evolving in such a way where when it came into our room and we had this conversation, it was not at all surprising to me. It was like, okay, so what are we going to have for dinner? Like, I don't, it didn't, really, that was
Right,
pretty much my reaction.
right. And because Leo, from my conversation with Lisa, that you two were in your bedroom and Leo came in and said, can I have a conversation with you? Is that correct?
Mhm.
And then basically in one sentence, so to speak, said, I want to share with you, I'm trans, I think, I'm transgender. You
That
can
was
speak.
very matter of fact, no big deal. Now, I will say that usually doesn't happen.
Mm,
Most kids that go through this, and again, I will say again, because we learn something new every day.
yeah.
I say me and Lisa and our family, but most parents are not educated about these things, which isn't their fault.
Mhm.
But they also, when confronted with these things, they often look at it from the perspective of themselves rather than turning it around and saying, this is not about me. This is about my child.
Yeah.
And that's where your brain needs to go, which is sometimes difficult. Let's face it, that is
Yeah.
difficult, you know. So it was, but to have to have created a situation where that was safe, that was a safe conversation for Leo to have with us,
Mhm.
is certainly something I and we are proud of, and that makes it a lot easier for a child. It's already hard enough to be dealing with the changes that everybody goes through as an adolescent. A typical child that is, going through the typical gender, what we'll call the typical gender journey, um, is still dealing with hormonal stuff and whatever.
Exactly.
It's difficult.
Exactly.
When you're dealing with these types of things, it's even that much more difficult. And then, oh, by the way, you don't have parents that want to support you. It's part of the
100%.
reason that there's such a huge percentage of kids that attempt suicide. Uh,
Right.
and now, oh, by the way, you have a bunch of conservative groups that are attacking bathroom rights.
Yeah.
So you have all types of things that are impacting this world, and we've created a home life where this is what's going to be supportive, and then we are finding ways of supporting this community, so that we can help others um, to better understand as well, so that they can better support their children as they go through this journey.
Well, here's why it was so important for me to have this conversation, because in our few interactions that we've been so fortunate to have just in this last year, you and I, what I immediately adored about you was, first off, we both know that you and I could sit down and probably kibitz all day long and never miss a beat. And there would not be one subject matter that you and I probably could not talk about. Not unlike your wife and I. And we wouldn't be faced, and even if we agreed to disagree, we would still be able to safely, openly, authentically share our perspective, our emotions, and how do we solve things, and how do we safely make whatever that environment we're referencing to, or subject matter. You know, how do we as citizens and individuals, you know, go through these things. And what I love about you and Lisa, even though you are distinctly two different individuals, I really love and appreciate that Leo felt safe enough to be able to very matter-of-factly come into your room and say to you, I'm a transgender, or I think I'm a trans, you know, and I believe at that point he knew.
Oh,
And
there was no question.
yeah,
And part of the reason there was no question is because we've created an environment where it's okay for him to not question his authentic self. And I believe that a lot of kids, because let's face it, we all look to our parents. So when your parents have made it clear that they're not going to be supportive of a certain something, or they're very strong-willed that they expect a certain something out of you, whether it's grades, or whether it's going into a certain profession, or whether it's whether it's something related to your sexuality or your gender, you know, that can have a big impact, you know, on how you evolve as a human. Which is, I look at it as a real shame. And I'm like, you know, the only thing that I can impact is the 3 kids that I have. You know, I can't fix the world, although it is very difficult for me to watch a lot of things that go on. So,
well, without a doubt, and anybody who's as sensitive as you are or we are, that does make it challenging. But you're right, you only technically have control over how your 3 kids develop, and yet they are 3 human beings who are individuals who are going to develop however they're going to develop, and hopefully their environment will foundationally give them the source and the resources to be the solid human beings that they are and go out into the world. Unfortunately, you don't have control over society and all their daily interactions, but you know, sending them out into the world, what you gifted them with, and that you can be confident with. But it's at the same time, going back to what you stated about other children and how it reflects how another parent may say, well, how does this look upon me? How is this going to make me look? Am I a failure? What are people going to think? What is the country club going to think? What is the, you know, the place where I work going to think? How am I going to manage, you know, just the how I. And as you said, this isn't about you, it's about your child. And how are you going to safely give your child the space to find, as you said, it's challenging enough for any individual under what isn't such a thing as norm. I think that's a word that we should just get rid of in the dictionary.
There's a lot of things, I try not to use certain words because it's like you need to define them. There really is no definition for normal.
No, there isn't. No, just normal, perfection, none of those things. There is no such thing. So what people societally want to put into a cookie cutter formation is the best way I'm going to describe it. There is no such thing. And we can know that as just individuals having not gone through becoming a transgender and identifying that, but going back to being a parent of a child of a transgender, in your brain as the accepting man that you are from the get-go, then besides, okay, what are we having for dinner? Kind of conversation in your brain, then where did you go in regards to, so I know Lisa had a very different reaction.
Yes.
How did you, as the partner to Lisa, observing and experiencing her reaction, what went on for you regarding that? Like, how did
it's an interesting question. You know, at first I was like, you know, relax, like it, you know, and I didn't really understand her reaction because to me, and I'm not holier than thou. I say that, but I'm really not. But I really was like, this is not about us. Like, what? Like, what? Why are you reacting this way? I didn't understand why, and then I understood why. Um, in one conversation that we had, Lisa and I are very connected. Like, we're very cerebrally, if that's a word, connected.
Yeah.
And when she explained to me that, you know, she was really looking forward to adopting a girl, and
Yeah.
that, you know, for a woman sharing that with, you know, it's just, that was something that was important to her, and
Yeah.
that was somewhat, I don't want to say taken away, because nothing was taken away. As a matter of fact, we've been given a great gift, you know,
Yes.
is the way that we really have. This
Oh,
experience
yeah.
has been a
Yeah.
tremendous gift. And it's interesting because our older son, you know, it's, I mean, you know, I go to Broadway shows with my older son, you know.
Mhm.
Leo is more into, you know, certain things that are more masculine. At the
Mhm.
end of the day, who cares? Like, we all just have experiences with one another, and they're fun. But back to your question, you know, Lisa's experience was quite a bit different, and mine was very seamless. Um, and has been very seamless, but we're very committed, both of us. The thing that never wavers is that we're both very committed to creating the best situation for our son, Leo. And that's something that Lisa has been committed to and has done. And there's never been the feeling, because it was never a question of not supporting. It was a
Right.
question of going through your own journey.
Right.
Um, and our journeys are always going to be different, right? We're going to perceive things, feel
Absolutely.
things differently. The other thing is that it's been interesting that people often, I think about the way that others will perceive them, and which I think is certainly a shame. But I don't really care how people perceive me. I gotten to that point in my life where I really don't, and I don't know that I ever did. But interestingly, people, they're the bigots out there. They're out there, okay, and we know they're out there, and I can tell you where they are. I pay attention, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I need to pay attention for my kids. But most people are actually envious of the way that we have react. It's very interesting. And you know, they want to talk with us about it, or they're like, God, you're such great. I'm like, I'm a great parent. Like, what are you talking? I'm just doing this supportive thing for your kid. Like, what else do you do? Like, I
Yeah.
don't get it. So there's this, and it's wonderful. I like that. I enjoy it. You know, I feel like maybe we can make a bit of a difference.
No, well, no question.
So,
No, I mean, I definitely think that, and Lisa and I had discussed this, that we just, you know, because when Lisa and I talked before we did our interview a while back, when she first started to share this with me, I said to her, the first thing that came to me was, after she told me that she had and her immediate reaction was hysterical crying, was, you know, did you feel like you were losing your daughter? Did you feel like you were mourning a death, even though Leo was alive right in front of you?
mhm.
And she said that was exactly it. And she said it had nothing to do with Leo. It had to just do with, you know, what my mind, where my mind had been when we first adopted her or him. And I meant to say, but in
Oh, that's fine.
reality,
That's all good.
no, and in reality, um, you know, I said, and yet here's the gift that you all have been given, to be this vehicle, this vessel, this source of information and inspiration, that all together as a family unit, you get to bring the perspective to light that many people may never go through, or those that are will be looking for a source. And go ahead.
Right. Well, so it's interesting. You know, I'm just thinking about, you know, most people go through their lives This gets really deep. I apologize, but
No, this is why I have this podcast, Aaron, because
so so
I don't want to be shallow.
I think most people go through their life putting on a show.
Yeah.
Okay? And what I mean by that is they're not their authentic selves.
No.
They want to be their authentic selves. They really do. Like people are so hungry for that, right? It's like, so I have, you and I've talked about, you work in Hollywood, I have friends in Hollywood, and they've been there for a long time and they finally found their niche. And most of them complain about it, to be honest with you, because it's so fake. The people are just not real. Everybody's trying to climb over each other. It's like everybody's in the crowded movie theater trying to get out of the movie theater and trying to climb over each other to get there, right? And that's not authentic. It's not real. And that gobbles a lot of people up in here, right?
Mhm.
And in here. That's why some people literally lose it, So I think people don't want that. We all want to be our authentic selves. Or sincere with ourselves, sincere with others around us. I just wrote a book called Sincerity, the Recipe for Living Your Best Personal and Professional Life. And it's interesting because it goes to something that I and Lisa are very proud of, which is creating an environment, a world that these kids have been able to be their authentic selves from the time they were little kids. I'm not here to tell them who to be.
Mhm.
I'm here to keep them on certain tracks so that they don't get off the tracks, right?
Mhm.
But I'm not here to tell them who to be, how to, and how to live their lives, who to love, how to love, what gender
Mhm.
they are. I'm here to help them to figure that out,
Mhm.
and then be supportive of them, and so it goes to, and it's interesting that coming through the time that we've all lived through, I think that more people, when you discuss this, they realize, oh my God, yes, I want that. It's part of the reason that this thing that some people may have heard about called the Great Resignation is happening, where a lot of people are reassessing their lives and saying, I don't want to just go to work for the sake of going to work. I want to do something that matters to me,
Mhm.
because I've been through all of this crap over the past couple of years. Maybe I'll find some people I like working with rather than people I have to work with. So anyway, I'll leave that there.
No, but this is 100%. And again, this is why, even though 5 years ago I had intended on wanting to launch this podcast before podcasts really had taken off, when the arrows all pointed in this direction, for anybody who knows me and is getting to know me, I am all about the deep conversation. I am all about there is nothing we can't talk about. I mean, hence the title Camp Fifi Uncensored. And that launched from the fact that, I was my purest self as a camp counselor, where anybody like Lisa could come to me and share anything in life that they were going through. And there was nothing I hadn't already experienced by the time I was 18. And that doesn't mean like, oh, aren't you something? No, I didn't want to be faced with the things I was faced with, but there it was. And now I had this toolbox that I could serve others with, young girls. And then the name Fifi being the nickname, and Uncensored because there isn't anything I can't talk about, from soup to nuts or cannolis, egg in the holes, and don't forget the s'mores, and let's come around the campfire so we can have this authentic conversation. Because like you referenced to Hollywood, if you show up smart, funny, insightful, can have a deep conversation, too much education, and you're not an executive producer or a talent in the chair, there's no room for that.
Yep.
And that's not how I walked into the room. And I wasn't walking in the room going, hey, hi, here I'm Felicia Linsky. No, I just wanted to be me. And getting back to this conversation, not about me, but the reason why I want to have these conversations is exactly why.
Yep.
Because this is who I am, how I've always been. I'm curious about people. I'm curious what makes them tick. I'm curious how they go through the world when they are faced with situations. And I want to be a person who helps be a vessel to help inform and enlighten people and make them feel safe and at ease so they can share their life stories, and in turn enlighten, and maybe one or many will be positively affected or sit and think. Because as you referenced, and you didn't use this term, but I will, there are too many people who are trying to fit their square peg into a round hole because of society's bullshit. There's
Yep.
too many people walking around with limited beliefs and or putting them on other people because of their own insecurities and fears. And whether it comes to a certain age or it just comes to, I am just so done because of all the abusive damage that I didn't walk into, or many didn't walk into, or unexpectedly walked into when they intentionally walked in to be themselves and go do what their best selves were. And then they got cause and effect by other people's
Oh,
damage because other people chose not to do self-development. And if this world doesn't get a hold of self-development and reflection and insightness and therapy and doing the things that need to be done in a healthy way and not detached through alcohol and through drugs and through sex and through eating or through just not listening and the unwillingness to hear people, if we sat around the campfire and listened to people, we could actually realize that we are all interconnected. We all need each other. We are all source to one another. We are all energy to one another. And we're only taking out each other's flames if we don't listen. And we're not here to douse the flames. We're here to raise up. That's what I'm here to do, is raise up. That's my superpower, is raising people up. And that's what I'm here to do, is to hug on you and help raise up other people through your story, through your share. And I want people to feel that they can be authentic, that there is no putting on here. None of this other shit matters because you're not going to be able to take it with you. So be your best self and be your heart and your soul now.
And find a place where you can be you and be your
Correct.
authentic self. And that's really what, as it relates to Leo and our whole family, but certainly, you know, the transgender journey is, you know, one where it is about being who you are and being one's authentic self. And we as parents, creating an environment, you know, where that's okay. And then helping Leo to find, because let's face it, this is a world of, there are certainly, there's supportive, there's more support out there, there's more education out there.
Thankfully.
At the same time, there are also, you know, what's gone on over the past few years has really uncovered a lot of hate out there for this particular part of the world. And it's interesting, through what I do for a living, I had a conversation with somebody who I happen to believe is unbelievable, who's with a great company called Ulta Beauty, and the CEO of Ulta Beauty and I had a conversation, and they're creating a whole beauty but program, if you will, around gender. And which is incredible. And it's not incredible because when you talk with him, he says, well, that's beauty. Like, the beauty is a lot of things, right? Beauty is not the typical, what people think of as beauty, which might be like, you know, and this is not to pick on the Kardashians or anything like that, but that's what young girls Instagram, like the Instagram model thing. You know?
Well, Instagram influencer.
Right. Absolutely. That's right. That's not, that, at least not to me, that's not beauty. Like, that to me, beauty is so many other things. Beauty is looking out the window that I happen to see right here and, you know, see squirrels running around. I mean, not to get too philosophical, but you know,
but it's true.
But that's, you know, so we all find beauty and you know, so the world's a pretty superficial place, you know, and we have not really raised superficial kids. And what's amazing, it's not amazing, actually, it makes sense. You know, my oldest is 21, almost 22, truly one of my best friends. You know, my middle kid, you know, 18, one of my best friends in a different way, you know. So this seems to be working, I guess, you know, I guess we'll just doing it, you know.
No, and I think that, you know, the circle of life of the exchange of love that everybody's receiving the benefits of that seed, those seeds you planted, the environment you created, the authentic of the space that you've given to be truth and love and safe. And it's interesting because I shared with you a list of like the kind of questions. So, and I want to still go over that because obviously you're a very different, person in regards to this, or not unique. And it's interesting because, I also shared with Lisa that my first, like I've had friends who have been gay as far as I can remember, as like when I was, under the age of 10. And my realization, my first friend who's transgender was right after I moved to LA. And I didn't know at the time that she was. We were working together on a show where we were both working side by side. And I remember thinking, before I realized she was transgender, I remember thinking how I identified with her and wanted to be like her because she came from New York and I was actually in an abusive relationship at the time. And I remember my abuser saying, you just need to toughen up. And I thought, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I am tough. And I looked at my friend, Michelle, and I was like, well, she's tough to me. And I knew a lot of tough people, but, she's tough in a feminine sort of way. Honest to God, the irony was the very next week I found out that Michelle had been born a little boy. And all the things that she went through over the next, 20 some odd years at the time of the age that we were, of how lucky she was to still be alive because of all the things that she had been faced as a little boy turning into a little girl. And then we went through her actual physical surgical shifts in the time that we were working together. But from 9 years old on, she started taking her sister's birth control pills to start changing things and started getting silicone injections to start developing things and start looking more like a female. And I laughed at myself. That I thought, this is the person that I'm looking to be the tough person. And intuitively, I couldn't have chosen better because she had been faced with so much stuff that one goes through as a transgender. And you touched on something earlier that I want to also acknowledge. You're absolutely right. Unfortunately, and I'll never forget that I was filming in Morocco in 2015. And I remember coming back and saying to many of my girlfriends how fortunate we were to be able to have open conversations and be able to, safely live our lives and have choices over our bodies and do all the things that our society has worked so hard to fight for in regards to just humanity. And then within a year and a half, things were flipping over like it was 30, 40 years ago. And all I'm saying is I'm acknowledging what you're saying is that Pandora's box was like unlocked. That's my way of putting it. I wrote a piece about it the night of the inauguration. 4 years later, everything that I wrote unexpectedly came to fruition. It was a little scary what my insights were, and I was writing from the perspective of a domestic violence survivor. And my point to that is, yes, unfortunately, no different than, some of us who've been exposed to things or had history put in front of us more than maybe others. If you're a little Jewish kid and you're taught about the Holocaust, or you're a child of other cultures and you're told about those wars or what have you, you come to become super heightened sensitive to the reality that this can repeat. And basically what we're both touching base on in our own roundabout way is that given the opportunity for people to be given the freedom to like let loose on the leash, all hell can break loose because there are a lot of people who are filled with hatred, or filled with limited beliefs. And I truly do believe that babies are not born this way. It is the environment that they are dropped into.
It is absolutely the case. And it, you know, the way that this is interesting, you know, the way that people get their information is a lot of what is, you know, dividing the world, I think. And, you know, it's, you know, I read this. Okay, well, where did you read it? I read it on the internet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You know, so as it relates to like there being quote unquote, there are only two genders, right?
Yeah.
And you read this all the time and people say, oh, that's science tells me XX and XY and, you know, the things that we all learn in science class. But we all know it is so much more complicated than that. And I'm not going to get into science, explaining
But
all the
it
science
is.
around transgender right now. Okay.
But it is.
But
it is more
okay.
complicated than
It is
that.
extremely fluid.
Yeah.
And it is scientifically been proven that, you know, I have estrogen. Okay.
Yeah.
I have, right. And
yeah.
So this is how the human body works. Okay.
Yeah.
So now, but people will find a little sliver of information and then they will run with it. And then the world is such where you can create a whole organization and raise money, right, for some cause against X, Y, or Z, just because you've decided you hate it or you believe this.
Right.
It's not even true.
No.
You know? This is why I get passionate about these things. And it's part of why I keep myself very, very informed. Because there's so much misinformation out there that is impacting certainly impacting the transgender community. It's impacting a lot of communities, but since we're here to talk about transgender, it's certainly impacting the transgender.
Well, we're going to have another podcast. You and I are going to have at least another 1 or 2 podcasts together, because again, this goes back to, there's a lot of things we can talk about. We will try to stay as much on the transgender conversation, but I think it's also,
but it all goes to it all is a circle, right? And it goes to where we are currently living, not where, but the point in history that we're currently living in.
True.
And the fact that this thing is great in some ways. In some ways, it's really, really negative, just like everything in history. Right?
100%.
And history does have a way of repeating itself. So it's just with different technology, you know?
Correct.
I think about, you know, I think about, God forbid, what would have happened if Hitler had this for propaganda, you know, and had Twitter, you know? I mean, could you imagine Hitler with Twitter, you know?
Aaron, listen, you know, again, we're, you know, and this is all interconnected, and this is a point going back to transgender, but
Hitler hated transgender, LGBTQ, anything that was, you know, anything that wasn't anything, you know? So.
But here's the thing, you go back to the beginning of man, so to speak, and this has all existed. This is all, here's the thing, man to man would have been perfectly fine. All they needed a woman for was procreating. They didn't need for any other, truthfully. And so the truth of the matter is, you know, and that's why probably we are treated the way we are still treated today in society, because really we're just only for certain reasons in most cultural perspectives. And so to then expand your mind and think about how a person born into a certain body can actually be the opposite of what they've been born into, and going back to science, I mean, if you don't believe in science and you don't believe that you are made up of cells and your DNA is like the mathematics to who you've become, and how we're all made up of a balance of hormones, and we all have estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone running through our systems. And depending upon what stage of the game or how much was distributed determines who you become in that moment and how you evolve over time. Is completely detached from reality, and it's delusional. I mean, it's enough the fact that we're all living in an illusion, but it's delusional that people have no sense of, I'm sorry, when did 1 and 1 not no longer equal 2? That like, that's just how basic it comes down to. How is it that you know, I don't want to get into color and black and white, because then we can get into a whole, like, you know, all the variations, but 1 and 1 will always equal 2. And science is research to find the finite specifics for various reasons, so they can solve problems and determine circumstances that are real, not false. And becoming, you know, being transgender is science, hormonal science, period, the end. A child did not get, you know, created and said, hey, I'm choosing, you know, ticket number 2 versus ticket number.
This is why when people say it's a lifestyle, or it's a, you know, it's like, it irks me, because I mean, it really does. It's like, you don't friggin' know what you're talking about.
No.
And, you know, even people that should know, like people that are charged with working in schools and such, they're not being educated in these things. They don't know, and they need to. That's part of what I and we, as you know, I feel that I, as a parent and an advocate in you know, need to try and help to bring, is helping to make sure that, you know, I can complain about it, or I can try and make a difference. You know, I'd rather try and be one that makes a difference, you know.
Well, I think that that's the positive about choosing. You know, you have a choice, and you're making a positive choice. You're not making a negative choice, and that's consciousness.
Yeah, I think, well, the first step of it is being conscious. The second step of it is, okay, figuring out how can I make a difference. You know, part of it is just, you know, whether it's going and standing on a street corner with a transgender flag, or flying, you know, being very comfortable flying a flag in front of my house, realizing that there's some people that hate that, you know, or whether it's making sure that I have made it, you know, I know, I mean, I live in a very, very liberal place. And I know that there are certain communities not far from me that are not so liberal, with people that are truly hateful. And I can tell you exactly who those people are. So I made sure to know, because I realize that, you know, I happen to have had, you know, a grandfather and family that escaped, some did not escape. Fascism is real. Fascism has always been here in the US, but it's reared its ugly head in some pretty scary ways. Yes, it does impact transgender, LGBTQ, it impacts Jews, it impacts everybody that's not, you know, that's what Charlottesville was about, right? That's what, you know.
Yeah.
So but to come back to what we're here to talk about, it's about trying to make a difference for a community that my son is a part of, you know.
Right. So I wanna go through a list of words and hear your response.
Sure.
Okay. And I'm just gonna randomly give you lists. So when you heard Leo announce that he is a transgender, shock. Was there shock?
No, not at all.
Okay. Mourning. Was there mourning?
No.
Okay. Acceptance. Was there
100%.
acceptance?
100%.
Openness.
100%.
100% openness.
Yeah.
Conversations.
Yeah, there's been conversations, but I personally didn't feel a need to like drive a conversation about it. It was more like, do you want to talk? Anything that you need, I'm there for you, but I'm not going to force you to talk about stuff. Which again seemed to seemed to give great comfort that we were not going to tell Leo what his experience with this was going to be, which I think a lot of parents tend to do with a lot of things with kids, not just with this, with homework, with where they're going to go to school, with what classes they should take, all that stuff. I don't do any of that. I can't tell you what my senior in high school, what classes he takes, because I trust him to do fine. And guess what? He got into every college that he applied to. So it's amazing. These kids can do a lot of stuff if you just let them do it.
Oh, absolutely. They completely can. I get that I'm not a parent, so people can, attack that for all they want, but they don't know the backstory to that. And it's not for me to judge regarding whether you helicopter or not in terms that we contemporarily use, but I respect the fact that. Let me ask you about conversations regarding with other people. You said it early on, conversations, so, I don't know what your friends are like, if you have close male friends, close female friends, communities you were part of before this or not. How about in those worlds?
So everybody has been unbelievably supportive. I've tried to walk, and I'm a very, very, very open person about everything. Just how I've always been. It gives me great comfort. Other people seem to be attracted to that, and it's humbling to me. So that's great. But I've had to realize that this is not my story. This is Leo's story. And I need to respect that, especially as he's getting older. And Leo just wants to be a human. He just wants to be a guy. He doesn't even want to be a transgender guy. He just wants to be a guy. Okay. Now some people are like, I'm going to be up, stand up and be part of the transgender community. And no, that is not what he wants to do. Okay.
Yeah.
So I need to respect that. At the same time, I have an experience through this as well. And I do want to make a difference in this world. So I need to find ways of balancing. But I have had people get in touch with me and say, I know that you've gone through this. I have my child that's got in touch. I had an ex-Navy friend, client of mine, very buttoned up Navy guy, ran a Navy ship, like Navy submarine, and he calls me up and says, I got a problem. I'm like, what's the problem? It's like, I got, my daughter thinks he's a boy or thinks she's a boy. The words are very specific, and we talked a little bit, and I think some of what I said to him was difficult for him to hear, because he's the typical, this can't be real. There's no way, no, your kids know a lot more than you give them credit for. And if you want to, I've seen the results of parents who have not been supportive. And what happens to the kids? And number two, what happens to the relationship with the kids? I mean, do you want to have a relationship with your kids when they're older or not? Because they're going to be who they're going to be, regardless of whether you want them to be or not. They're going to go and be that.
100%. So absolutely true.
But it's, they're just going to run away.
Yeah. And hopefully you can, people, and that leads me to the next, word, which is exploration with, what did you find that you had to explore versus what was being put before you, and then in regards to communities or what have you, how does that word resonate with you?
Huge educational curve, which I'm still coming down, which we're actually all coming through that together as a family. I've learned a lot from Leo. It's very interesting. For somebody who's the age that he is, he knows a lot. He's really educated himself. And we go to the doctor or whatever, and the doctor will ask, what do you know about this? And he says, this is what I know. And the doctor's like, oh, you're right. So it's amazing the research that, and I've always had it's not a theory, it's just the way that I parent, that I don't decide what my kids can handle based on their chronological age, because I think that humans can often handle much more than we give them credit for based on their age. I was parented, I love my parents, but I was parented in such a way where it's, oh, he's too young.
Yeah.
And I remember that. And I remember thinking, what? Like, I understand that better than you do. You know, you're because my parents were a little bit more simple, you know, and I love my parents, but their understanding of things were a little bit more in the box. I was a little bit more outside the box, you know,
Yeah.
and I think they would agree with that. It was part of why we at times didn't get along. So yes, there was a lot of exploring. There continues to be.
Mhm.
We continue to learn something new. You know, I got involved in an advocates group that I was going to be on the board of until I realized that I didn't have the time to be on the board. I tend to sometimes bite off more than I can chew, but I'm still involved as, you know, as a member. And you know, that group is called PFLAG. So there are always ways, and even if you're not a parent of somebody that's transgender, there are ways of being involved in these communities if one would like to. And it's really a wonderful, it's a wonderful community of people. I mean, everything's a wonderful community of people in these little pockets, but I've really met some great people.
I imagine.
So
I mean, people are amazing. Human beings are delicious. You know, if we give
it's
ourselves the
wonderful,
opportunity to
but
connect.
the thing about it is there is so much, you know, there was right not too far from here, they were going to have an event. They actually wound up having it, but they had to move it, where they had a transgender Santa. You know, little kids, I know of kids, and I'm going to tell you of an organization in a moment. I know of kids that have realized very early in their lives, very early,
Mhm.
that mommy, I'm a boy, or mommy, I'm a little girl.
Yeah.
And those kids deserve to see a Santa that reflects who they are in here and in here, right? So they had this transgender Santa event. The conservatives and Proud Boys around here found out about it and decided to go and mess it up, right? So they wound up having to move it on the QT. And this is the kind of stuff that, you know, there's a lot of support that is needed in this community from people that are both in the community as well as those that are like-minded outside the community that
Mhm.
realize that people are who they are. Sexuality and gender are not the same thing.
Right.
And you know, there is such a spectrum, and people that are interested in learning and getting involved should do so, because it's a wonderful place of wonderful, loving energy and great open-minded people.
Yeah, and this is not a space where it's, you know, you turn your cheek. It's not a space where, oh, this has nothing to do with me, so therefore I'm not going to engage.
Right.
Because, you know,
Because you're going to find people are very open, regardless of whether you're transgender or not, or whether you have a family member or a friend or not. If you want to be involved, you will be welcomed with open arms. And that advocacy is needed and appreciated.
Agreed. I mean, again, my reason for wanting to have these conversations. So my next word is questions. If you
Every
can
day.
think of, okay, and you could, you know, so every day new questions come to light for you that you inquire and seek out to get answers for. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because I'm always trying to learn, just in general, certainly about things that impact me or my family. Thankfully, I have, you know, we all have access to this Google machine, right? And there's a lot of access. I have access to doctors where I can ask good questions. I also realize to take certain things with a grain of salt when I'm reading certain things. But yes, I'm always trying to better understand the medical side of it, as well as the psychological side of it, so that I can be a source of helping to guide my son to get information in the right places, as well as, again, to figure out how I can best help.
Absolutely. And I love that. And then my next question or my next word is fear.
No, I'm not really fearful. cautious, maybe is the right word, realizing that there are literally people out there that hate transgender people because they're transgender. There's also people out there that hate Jewish people because they're Jewish, and I happen to be Jewish, and I've been Jewish for 52 years. So I've lived with that my whole life. You know, I grew up with my mom who made sure that I was educated on the Holocaust. You know, people want to compare vaccine mandates and, you know, to what went on in Nazi Germany, and those things are not comparable. So you have a lot of people, I bring that up for a reason, which is that a lot of people want to tell you what your experience is based on their perspective. And I'm
or lack thereof. Or lack thereof.
Or lack thereof, right? Or just what they think they know. So they think they know something about transgender, or they knew, or they don't even know anybody. They saw somebody walking down the street, and therefore that they think they know, or they read something, you know, or they've been to a drag show, which, you know, which is not, you know, it's like, that's not it, you know. No. Questions and fear, you know, fearfulness. I'm not fearful, maybe cautious is maybe a better word.
And what about for Leo?
What's that? Oh, for Leo? Leo's fearful of anything.
And do you, and so I love and appreciate the fact that you don't have fear and Leo's not fearful. Do you have any fear for Leo, just in regards to society and other things?
I'm almost fearful that Leo isn't fearful.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, words, like innocently bliss, in the sense that
I want there to be innocent bliss. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Kumbaya, awesome. But we need to realize that the world out there, and I do let him know.
Yeah.
The reason that I go to rallies and such. I take a lot of photos. I'm kind of a mini photographer that isn't, but I have a good iPhone. And
I love that.
But there's a lot of hate out there. I don't hide my kids from the fact that nor do I hide myself from the fact that there's a lot of hate out there, because there are things that have happened in the past. You mentioned the history tends to repeat itself.
Yeah.
There are things that have happened in the past that I certainly don't want to see repeat themselves. I'm not saying that certain things are repeating themselves, but I am saying that we need to understand the past so that certain patterns don't repeat themselves. And I make sure to understand what's going on. And I'm going to make sure to let my kids know, you know, my son who's gay, who is very out gay and very, you know, that's great. But realize if you go to certain places and you walk down the street by yourself, you could get hit over the head.
Correct.
Know? Correct. It's just a fact, man. And
it is an absolute fact. You're not going to change the culture. You have to act. It's like one in Rome, act like the Roman mentality for the sake of your own preservation.
Right. Now, I will walk anywhere. I don't happen to wear a Jewish star. You know, if I did, I would walk everywhere with my Jewish star, and I would not be afraid to walk with that's me. Okay. That's me. I'm not going to tell other people to do that. And I realize that I may take a risk in doing that. Right. But that's me. I realize that risk, you know, but I wouldn't walk down the street in ignorant bliss. And then if somebody hit me over that, I can't believe that happened. You know, if I was walking in a certain area of town, because, you know.
Right. No, and this is true. And, you know, I'm going to keep cities out of it and parts of the world out of it and all that. But the truth is, it doesn't matter whether you're transgender, gay, Jewish, female, whatever. There's always going to be parts of the world that don't want you there.
Of course,
that don't think you have a place in society, and will always make certain of your elimination or your degradation or however they're going to belittle whoever you are. And that is not to be negative. That is to be honest and real and authentic, because I think in educating people and making them aware of why advocacy and standing up for, because the truth of the matter is, you can be the most not open-minded human being that actually gets faced with these things in your own community, in your own family, and 9 out of 10 times it's going to happen. You know, whether it's, you bear a child who is transgender or gay or in a mixed relationship or a mixed faith relationship or whatever it is that's completely against your beliefs, life has a funny way of facing you with these things, good, bad, or otherwise, for what it's worth. And, you know, and I don't know if that's God's funny joke or if it's just, you know, why we can write, you know, why Shakespeare could write what Shakespeare wrote, or anybody else who, you know, puts pen to paper. So the next statement was, did you see this coming? And we started out the conversation this way. Did you see this coming?
I you know, I wouldn't have been surprised if it didn't come, but I wasn't surprised. Whoops. I wasn't surprised when it did. So I didn't see it coming as much as I saw my son, my first son, you know, when he came to us and came out, that I totally saw coming. This wasn't quite as clear and such. So no, I don't think I know. I think I'd say probably not. But I didn't see it coming, but I wasn't necessarily surprised, if that makes sense.
So that's what I was going to say. So you didn't see it coming, but you weren't shocked.
Correct.
So clearly, you know, there had to have been some unconscious intuition that, whether it's because you're such an open human being and so accepting, or that it doesn't matter what your child says.
I think it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me. Like, it really doesn't matter to me. Like, it doesn't matter to me. Like,
as long as your child's healthy and happy.
As long as they're happy and healthy.
Safe. Yeah.
You know, they're all my kids, you know?
Yeah.
And I really, life is a heck of a lot easier when you go through life that way. That's just kind of, you know, I can be artificial about things and make it a lot more difficult. But you know, I make other things more difficult. So, you know, I just replace that with other stuff, you know.
Well, life is going to give you plenty of options.
Right.
So
exactly.
It's really how you go through it, you know, and face it up. And my next statement is, now what? Like, how do you feel like where you are today versus you know, when you first heard this information from Leo? Like,
so,
where
you know,
do you
there's Leo's an adolescent. There's a lot of changes going on through adolescence already.
Mm-hmm.
In the transgender and some of those transitions that Leo is going through, this is a constant evolution and a constant journey through which we need to be supportive, accepting. There's one thing, and we happen to both understand and accept, but what people often have to understand is what people need to know is that you don't need to understand to accept. That's an important thing. My parents still struggle with that a little bit because they kind of don't get it, but they're accepting it, but it's still hard. So the what's next is a constant what's next. It will always be. And whatever decisions are made by Leo, as far as there's a lot of different, you know, some people have different surgeries, some people don't have surgeries. They live their lives as, you know, female, male, they live, you know, they use the they them pronouns, you know, where, you know, sometimes it's fluid and it depends on, you know, almost literally on the day. And our go forward is just to be supportive and understanding. And if we do those things, we will continue to have an evolving, loving relationship, you know, friendship really with our child, which is where it needs to start. And that always starts with respect. And it doesn't matter who your kids are, what gender they are, what sexuality they are, any of that. It all starts with respect. And I think a lot of parents, they tell their kids how to live their lives rather than respecting how their kids are living their lives. And it creates issues in relationships with parents and their kids, especially as they become adults.
100%. So the next word on my list, because I don't have these like in a congruent, is safety.
Yeah, safety concerns me a little bit, but it's something I can only do so much about. So it's being aware, making sure that our family knows that we need to be aware. It doesn't stop me from flying a flag in front of my house. It doesn't stop me from going to rallies and using my First Amendment rights and using my voice. So I realize that if I'm going to make a difference, I can't be 100% safe. Okay, I can't be 100% safe because I need to be out there using my voice. Okay, I think about those that in history that were 100% safe, right? They didn't pay attention to what was going on, and then we see what happened. So I'm not going to sit by idly and watch things happen. And therefore, does that make the environment a little bit less safe for me? Maybe, but I'm willing to do that. And we'll see what Leo decides to do, if anything, in regards to that. And we all have our own journey that we're going through as it relates to that.
So it's interesting. I have a question regarding, first off, the flag. Did you have a flag up when your first child came out?
Yes.
Okay, so this wasn't a new thing. This was something
we changed it from the pride flag to the flag that is the more that's got, I don't remember what they call it, I should know, but it's more of the inclusive, transgender, and we changed it to that flag, and now we have the pride flag inside our house.
I love that. And I also love the statement about being a voice for others, and for using the example of those who felt that they were safe, and we know the result of that, and being somebody who has not only, and this is non-related obviously to transgender, but there's a point to this, is having survived domestic violence and then 4 bouts of thyroid cancer where I could have lost my voice. This is why, again, this platform of doing this is so important to me, because I do want to help people share their voices to the world, because I think it's super important that people be heard and that people have the opportunity in safe places to hear others so they can hear themselves. Because like other times in history, I do believe that people trusted too much and weren't advocates enough and accepted that things were such. And if we do have souls that are reincarnated, which I personally believe, that I definitely believe that I was standing up. I've always been that person who stood up for the little guy and took the uncomfortable road to, whether it was an underground situation or what have you, that, and I don't have to, be all that with the breastplate on or what. It's just, having a love for humanity and love for your neighbor and love for your loved ones. Enough said.
Yeah, and that, for me, that's something that this sounds really weird, but it's something that burns inside of me, and I can't help it. Like, I have to. Like, there are times where Lisa sometimes doesn't get it. It's like, why are you going to a rally? And I'm like, because I just have to. Like, I can't bear to think that this is happening and me not at least use my voice. At least then I can say I didn't just stand by. And it's interesting because through a friend of mine, I got to know, I didn't get to know, but I heard speak a Holocaust survivor. And it was very interesting because this is about 1.5 years or so ago, when a lot of things were starting to brew and such. And he said, over the years, people will ask him, could you ever see this happening again? And he would always say, no, in reality, no, it's not going to happen again. It's not going to happen in the US. Yeah, there's things that brew around, but he's like, this is the first time where I could actually, I actually will tell you that the fascism that's going on and the hate that's going on, and it's to everything. It's to all different types of people, right?
Oh,
certainly it really, it truly is. I mean,
yes.
the way that bathroom rights, we're living in an environment where uh, where those things can happen again. And it goes to, if you live, and I don't want to get turned, this is not a political conversation in any way, shape, or form. It's just the truth. If you live in an environment where people don't trust the results of certain official things, it breaks down a society in such a way where individuals and individual groups like transgender groups or like LGBTQ or like different religious groups will be persecuted because
Correct.
it creates an environment where that can happen.
Correct. Well,
it breaks down society.
It does. And I'm gonna write on the coattails of that, in support of that, because again, not a political statement, but a very authentic, true statement. We are now losing daily, and have been for some time, the generations who survived a lot of those things and fought for a lot of those things that we as a society have benefited from on the backs of their loss. And it doesn't matter if it's women's rights or surviving a Holocaust in World War II, and it doesn't matter if it was military or whomever. It's across the board. And if we don't, as we have both highlighted, if we do not understand our history and where we come from, then we don't understand and value what we've achieved and what we need to stand for and what we need to fight for and what we need to speak up about for the sake of not only our present day, but our future.
Absolutely. Our kids. I think about, in the
100%.
context of this conversation, my son who is transgender. Now we'll go through transition. We'll get to a point where that will not be a conspicuous thing. So we'll be a man for all intents and purposes.
Right.
So but all three of my kids are living in the world that is being set up today. And that world is quite a bit different than the world I lived in, where, there were, when I was a kid, there were 3 channels and, 4, 5, whatever it was. And there were a couple different news channels, and the news was the news, and it was real. And regardless of your political stance, and to be honest with you, I don't remember if my dad was Republican or Democrat, because it didn't have anything to do with, whether I had a basketball in my hand or whether I was being in a show. So therefore those things, now I can tell you, my kids from the time they were X age could tell you whether I was left or right. Should they know that at that age? Should they be living in a world where they can't be kids? And again, a lot of it comes down to the way that we all get information, right?
Well, and I think it does start with your family environment. I, unlike any of my peers, and including many of my adult peers, was extremely aware. Probably wasn't a child when I should have been a child, because of the things I was exposed to and the things that I was educated and made aware of, whether it was the politics, whether it was about inclusion and diversity, whether it was about, because my family and my family's businesses, be it the fashion business, be it politics, be it real estate, they were all about diversity and they were all about inclusion, and they were all fighting for civil rights and racial rights, women's rights, voting rights. I was every Sunday getting exposed, or many Sundays getting exposed to World War II movies of the Holocaust. And even though none of my family that we're aware of ever went through that because they were already here, there's probably people and family members that ended up in Argentina or what have you out of the survival of all of that. But very much made aware of what happened, what was going on, and what was possible again. And I remember thinking none of my friends ever were faced with any of these conversations. I knew what my family, I knew what my grandparents' political stance was, my parents' political stance was. I knew all of it under the age of 10. And I mean, I was probably 5 or 6 when we were flying from Chicago to New York. And my mother said, if this plane gets hijacked, you're not Jewish, you're Italian.
Yeah, that
Now,
sounds like something my mom would, yeah.
and being that I'm both, or Cecilia, being that I'm both, I knew that my mother was taking a position that this is real. You may be this young, but you need to be aware, God forbid we're faced with this, even though we're in the United States of America. People are shocked to this day when they hear this conversation. This is not about my story. This is about to say that this is all real. So whether you are raising a child who's transgender, gay, in an interracial relationship, in an interfaith relationship, in whatever they're going through, these things are repeating themselves. And we need to get a hold of that. Yep. We need to understand that that is not a bullshit statement. And I've interacted with plenty of people under a certain age, and I'm going to just say under the age of 40, and love. But I can say, just on a female perspective, many females just think it's always been this way, that they've always had the rights to like have a bank account, have their name, have a job, have a check.
Well, that's all they know.
It's all they know. And I love and appreciate that that's all they know. But it's also interesting to me that I remember at their age, or certainly like I just described as a child, that this didn't exist. And I knew the history of 40 and 60 years back. Why? Because I was exposed to it. Now, my exposure was no different than any other kid, relatively speaking. It wasn't like I was getting some different education. Yes, I do think it's the household, and I do think that goes back to the environment. And so coming back to like your experience as a parent with Leo, ironically, my next word is education.
So yeah, education has happened for us and continues to happen for us through Leo first, through our doctors, both on the psychological side as well as on the medical side of things, depending on decisions that Leo is making and wants to make, so that we can best educate and guide. So it's there has to be a certain level of curiosity on our part. We have to be curious parents, different from, and now some parents might decide I'm not curious, and I think I know what I know, and then they're not going to be supportive, and they're not going to ask the right questions or provide the right answers or know when to not ask a question. Because it might not be our place to ask that question, because we've educated ourselves and know that maybe that's something that our son should handle himself. So it's a constant education. Yeah, and just like life, right? I mean, we're always learning about life. So this is, I think maybe the message there is that this is life. Like this is our son's life. So we, just like my other, my oldest who's gay, I have to be educated about that. They're just like, my other son is into, certain sports, and I happen to be into sports, and I need to be educated about that to connect with him, so it's always an education.
And then speaking of education, and I think you're right. I mean, I think curiosity and education go hand in hand. And I think that leads to just engagement, involvement actively at all, without it, like we earlier said, without it being a helicopter-y sort of way. It's more about in the way that you get to support and how you get to show up and be, which brings me to the word therapy.
So are you talking about formal therapy, or are you talking about being therapeutic, if you will?
So that's a great question. So initially, my word therapy meant, did you feel a need to seek out therapists to help you to be the best parent you could be in regards to going through this transition? And also, on all levels, like let's make it an inclusive word, whatever that, however that resonates.
So what we felt the need to do was to consult experts and people who had more expertise in this than we do. That could be therapists, that could be doctors, that could be all types of things, right? So we started at first with doctors who work in the transgender world. From there, we got recommendations to okay, it makes sense to work with a therapist based on the way that we're planning on going up, based on the way that Leo's experience is guiding him, and based on those conversations, here's our plan. Based on that plan, here are the players we need on the team, right? We need this stuff. We need a doctor. We need a therapist. Okay, so we then, based on I didn't feel I needed therapy. But we might need that type of support, right? But based on that, we then put the right team together so that we weren't looking at this through a siloed lens, and that's what a lot of people do, right? So, well, you need a therapist. Well, why? So it's more asking Leo, like, do you feel like you need to talk to somebody? Because I don't feel like I want to force you to have conversation, although realize that people that are going through these types of transitions often do need that type of support, and here's why. So don't be blind to it, right?
Yeah.
Don't feel like you can't ask for it.
Yeah.
So, and constantly reinforcing that message, right? That is there for you if you need it, but I don't want you to feel like you need to get on a call just to, so at one point through this, Leo was having a conversation. He's like, I don't really feel like I need this. Like, all I'm doing is getting on, and we're really not talking about anything, and that can have the reverse
right
impact.
Well, and third party support, and I always say this about experts when it comes to therapy, third party support is a tool no different than having a great friend but in this particular case, and it's interesting because I think, wow, how far things have come and how much farther they need to go. But I know 25, 30 years ago, when I was indirectly being exposed to my friend's journey, what was available to them versus what is available now. And thank God how much further we have come and how much more prevalent this conversation is today and how many more experts are available today, because I know for my friend, those experts were not available and certainly not in this country. And so, I'm thankful to hear that it's accessible more for your child, for your family, if needed, if wanted, and that there's an openness, because I also think when it comes to the word and the service, that there's such negativity also to that source. I mean, if you need to go to the dentist, you need to go to the dentist. I mean, you need to keep a checkup, just like, going for your physical or what have you. Therapy to me is all about having a safe space with an excellent source of a human being who's an expert in that field, that can be a sounding board and can be a safe zone. And we need to eliminate what people think about when it comes to that part of healthcare. And that's why, I asked.
The thing about it is that a lot of it, I'm 52 years old. I think there's more people in certainly in our generation, if you will, Felicia, that are open to therapy for different things, more than maybe in our parents' generation. But I still think that there's people in our generation that aren't open to it, and that just are there, oh, just tough it out, you're fine. Put a band-aid.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right. And yet, ironically, again, God love my parents, man. Every time they were open, they were actually.
Then so were mine. My parents were very thankfully, I had parents who were very, very open to that, which was wonderful. And I always have loved, I mean, I've always been very into therapy, but I also realize, I mean, I've had some therapists that didn't do anything for me, didn't do any good for me at all. It was a waste of money, and it was just going and me talking and them listening, and there was no there, you know. I'm now at a point, and I've also been in group therapy as well, which was tremendously interesting, as far as how people interact and and whether they're honest with themselves and those types of things. So I believe therapy is something that people should avail themselves of whenever possible, whether it's a bit off the topic of transgender, but it is when going through any type of change, which we're all constantly going through.
100%.
The fact that we're all human, understanding other people,
Yeah.
other people, you know, as a sounding board that are a third party that aren't in our family.
Yeah.
Having group, you know, I had no idea what to expect when I came into group therapy, which was tremendously interesting, because having a sounding board of a bunch of people that know you, that see you every week, but that don't know the rest of your family other than through your eyes, is very interesting. And
Agreed.
it could be interesting, certainly for somebody that's going through a transgender experience, you know, because they're going to have people in their lives that are going to understand them at different levels, and being able to come to one place that get them every day. That could, I mean, I haven't thought about that until now, to be honest with you.
Well, it's also interesting. And again, I'm going to write on the coattails of that. I always say to people, if you need a third party source, which is a healthy thing to do, no matter what, you don't have to be on the ends of your, you know, like hanging by a thread situation.
Not at all.
I personally think that, like anything, when you're going to buy a car, you look at many cars, you go to many dealerships. When you're looking for a therapist, you need to interview a handful of therapists to find the right source it's going to be, because the first person you go to or refer to does not necessarily mean that that is the right fit for you. So I always try to educate people about that, number one. Number two, when it comes to group therapy, if it's a healthy environment, which is an ironic statement, if it's a healthy environment, for whatever the reason the group therapy is created, whether it is for, you know, AA, or if it's for
it's so important.
who
who is together, who those people are, how they trigger or don't trigger each other. It has to be a true expert that is putting that group of humans together. We all had already worked with this guy in individual therapy. So he called me and invited me. He said, I am inviting you for a particular reason. Number one, I think you'll benefit. Number two, I've put the particular people together in this that will trigger each other in certain ways that will be extremely beneficial. Just trust me. I know. Well, he was very right. It was very interesting.
Well, and what's interesting, and what is interesting about group therapy and bringing it to, I would imagine, with, you know, going through with the announcement of Leo being transgender, is what happens in group therapy for people is that you get to hear your story and other people's stories. You get to hear a sense of relatedness that one person might in fact have gone through, and can teach you through just by sitting there and listening. It gives you great listening skills. It gives you great reflective skills. It gives you an understanding of you're not alone, how we're all interconnected, and how we can all serve each other.
Give you empathy. I mean, really, what it, as I'm sitting here, I'm realizing that I didn't think about this, of the real impact of that for me, is really that it helped me, certainly helped me to be a better parent, a better friend, a better, somebody that better understands my children who are different and people that are different, which my mother, I mean, I'll tell you, my parents, I mean, my mom was very wonderful with that. I mean, she was somebody who always was there working with and for the underdog in very real ways. So, you know, whether it was going and helping developmentally disabled kids and bringing me with her, and these are kids that were like severely disabled that would like hit her, you know, and she'd still go back for more, you know. So seeing those examples, is really important. At least it's been important for me to understand how to be the best father to guide my children through the different journeys that kids go through in general. I mean, I see parents that, I mean, it's the extreme example, but literally like do nothing for their kid. Like they don't guide them through anything. Then I see some parents that are helicoptering,
Yeah.
listening to their children,
Yes.
and they have kids that despise them,
Yes.
and they think they're doing something for their kids,
Yes.
And I'm not the perfect parent in any way, shape, or form. I don't
No,
want
you're just
anything,
observing. You're speaking on your observations, which brings me to the next word, which is relationships.
Our relationship with, as a family and with Leo, has gotten better through this and continues to. And I don't think that would be surprising, right? I think that the more you support, kids are smart.
Yeah.
They know when they're supported and when they're not. And when they're not, they're going to run over time. And they're not going to, my goal, like I said to Lisa years ago, I remember when I said it, when our oldest was just starting to do homework and stuff. I said, it's not my job. I will hold my kids accountable to stuff, but that's not, if that's all I do is hold them accountable, I'm not doing my job well, because I'm not going to be there to hold them accountable forever. And that's not what I want to do. I want to teach them to hold themselves accountable.
Yeah.
And if I do that, then we can have fun together when they're older, and they'll know how to hold themselves accountable, and they won't despise me.
Yeah.
And then I can guide them just like I do with my friends. I love my friends. I love my kids. We guide each other through life. If I have a blind spot, my friends say to me, "Hey, Aaron, you got a blind spot. You're about to step on a pothole. You might not want to step there." And I know that they have my best interest at heart, so I listen to them. It's the same thing that I think that we owe to our children.
Agreed. And in regards to relationships in your circles outside of your family unit, how has it deepened? Has it shifted? Has it become more reflective?
Well, it's interesting because over the past few years, all of my relationships have evolved for different reasons. This is one of many reasons. Career-wise, I wrote a book. I started an executive connections group where I'm bringing people. I've always been a connector, so I'm constantly connecting people. So I'm always finding relationships, and it's not just about new relationships. It's about new relationships that lead to deep relationships. And I'm always fine, but a lot of people are always searching for the next relationship, and then they're at the cocktail party and they're looking over their shoulder. It's like, oh, who else can I meet today? Rather than paying attention to the person that they meet. So I've always been pretty deep relationship wise. Maybe it's my acting background. I don't know. There's a curiosity that I've always brought to relationships, but this experience with all three of my children, being a parent in general, I don't think a lot of people realize this, but I think if they think about it, they'll realize that being a parent has changed the way that they create relationships with others. That could be on the positive or on the negative. For us, I think it's been more on the positive, and it's interesting because people will, and I don't know why it is, but people will sometimes get in touch and say, I need an opinion about this, about a relationship of this, that, or the other thing. And that's when it's like, I don't remember who it was I heard speak a few years ago. They said, in your 30s, you're learning things. In your 40s, you're applying things. In your 50s, you're sharing the things that you've learned. Right. And that's where I kind of am. And, now I put myself out there to be like, hey, if you have, people, I want to be a resource to people, but people are finding me around those types of things. And that's both really cool. It's part of why you're doing what you're doing. Right.
Yep.
And it's putting it out there and realizing I have a voice to help others. And I'm not just going to sit back there and I'm going to put myself out there. And that becomes a snowball that I feel like making the world a better place and me becoming a better human are all happening at the same time, which is helping my whole sphere, my family and my friends.
I agree. I mean, every time you
Like manifesting. People talk about that whole manifest thing, which I think is maybe happening a bit. So
there's no question. I mean, I think it's kind of like taking it back to being a farmer. You planted a lot of seeds, and this is the evolution of what's manifested from that. When you and I talk, this happens to be this conversation, I always think to myself, how did I know Aaron when I was a kid? You were definitely a different version of a soulmate of mine as a male friend, because you and I think not similarly, but as two individuals have very deep consciousness of similar interests, of connection, of consciousness, of speaking up, of using your powers for the benefits of others, wanting better for all that we love, all the things and so on. I mean, I could go on from there, and that's why I will.
Oh, I totally agree. And it's interesting, Felicia, because I've gotten to this point in my life, career-wise and personally, where I'm finding those people. And they tend to be what I call very real, genuine, authentic, no bullshit. They say it like it is.
Mhm.
They're pretty blunt. They're nice, but they're blunt. I'm blunt. I'm nice, but I'm not going to pull punches. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
Right.
I love you, which is why I'm doing it.
Correct.
If I'm wrong, or if you feel I'm wrong, let's discuss it. And I'm willing to be wrong. I'm also willing to disagree and leave that conversation respecting one another, but I think that I know that I'm personally at the point in my life where it's like the perfect time to be a parent, because it's not about me, and it's not about me creating my kids to put out there on and say my kids go to this college and they're doing this thing and therefore I'm cool. No, my kids are happy. That's all that matters.
Right.
That's the first question that should be asked. What they're doing, I'll tell you what they're doing, but the most important thing is they're happy doing it.
Right. Well, the next words are effect on family.
So effect on our little core family here, it's been a positive for everyone, but for our little core family here, it's been somewhat a non-event, other than, again, Lisa has gone through her experience.
Mm-hmm.
My middle kid is like, whatever, he's a guy's guy, whatever, but he's very supportive and gets it. My oldest is, given that he came out and the way that he came out very openly through a spoken word poem that everybody knows, so the effect on our extended family has been a bit more interesting. My dad still has difficulty with the pronoun thing.
Mm-hmm.
My dad is more of a wonderful, nice man, but very traditional in his thinking. I have an uncle who's gay. We've always known he was gay. My dad had never had trouble with that and doesn't have trouble with people that are different. But transgender is a whole different animal, So that's been difficult for him, but he's finally getting the hang of the pronoun thing, I think, although he still slips up on it. And to me, by the way, I'm pretty hard-nosed about that, because it takes effort and you need to just do it. And
correct.
This is a kid and your grandpa. Therefore, you need to just friggin' do it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear an excuse. And it's not because you're older, because you remember all of your prices and all of the costs of all of your products. So don't tell me you're getting old and you don't remember.
No, that's an excuse.
Right. It's an excuse. So I'm pretty blunt about that. My mom, who has always been, it was wonderful. We went out to dinner a few nights ago, and Leo and my mom sat on the other side of the table and kind of had their private little conversation, and he was explaining different things, and so she's getting it, and that's good to see. Lisa's mom asks a lot of questions and is getting it. And it's creating a beautiful relationship, and I think it will continue to, between Leo and his grandparents. And I'm hopeful that continues.
I believe it will. I believe it will, because I think that you both come from foundations that, again, we're always growing. It doesn't matter if you're 2 or you're 200. It's, if you have, and you both came from conscious foundations that were expansive and always, be it education, cultural, what have you. And that's why they raised 2 great kids who became 2 great parents and found each other, and, are now creating your legacy of your next generation. So I have full faith that will continue, and thank goodness that you've got several generations to be able to build on this. And that leads me to the next word, which is community.
I had a feeling you were going to. Why did I have a feeling you were going to go to that?
Because you're intuitive.
I'm not kidding. I really did think that you were going to. Wow, that's bizarre. But again, it's not surprising.
No.
So community. So let's talk about my experience as it relates to community first, and then we'll talk about the rest of our family as it relates to community. So I am very, very into the community. I grew up in the same community that we now live in. It matters to me, both in my head and my heart. So everything from the schools to the parks, to the people, to the way that people treat one another, to all of those things really matter to me. So watching some things is, related to schools opening or not opening, or masks or no masks, and the way that people fought about that stuff is somewhat difficult for me. And I get involved, and I have a mouth, and I open my mouth, and I go to city council meetings, and I speak up, and those things. And thankfully I don't go off half-cocked, if you will. So therefore, people know I'm reasonable. Okay. So from a community perspective, for me, I've tried to find a community of advocates and such that I can insert myself into, of people that understand, right? So whether it's Facebook groups, getting to know people, whether it's, hearing about, situations that go on where different groups are not treated correctly, and there might be a rally, and I'll go out to that rally in the community, right? So it is making me even want to be more active in the community that I live in and the surrounding communities, whether it has to do with transgender rights, whether it has to do with all types of things that are going on that we are currently living through today. And this is not a conversation about masks or vaccines or any of those types of things, but I have opinions about all of those things, and all of those things are based on, I don't want to say me doing my own research, because I'm not qualified to do my own research. I'm not a doctor. I talk to doctors, I talk to the right people, I consult to the right places, and that's where my opinion, it's not even my opinions, because I'm not ready to, I didn't go to school for those things. But so from a community perspective, I have found myself getting involved in finding ways to help the community around this. Lisa isn't so interested in that. It's for her more it's creating the home life, and whether that will continue, who knows. Leo, as long as Leo is happy in his school community, which he very much is, feels very supportive in that community, it isn't really, at least at this point, interested in being an advocate in that community. Whether that will happen or not, who knows, and I'm supportive and understanding of that regardless.
Which leads me to the next word, which is fitting in.
Fitting in?
Yes.
So I in a lot of ways, I never felt like I fit in when I was young and growing up, and I've always felt like I fit in all at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're talking to that person.
Yeah, so I probably why we get along so well and why I
Yeah.
think I knew you in a prior life. Because really from the minute we first sat down, I'm like, I know this person. Like, how did I must have had a conversation with this person at some point in my life.
Yeah,
Which
no,
but
we
it
were,
also goes to, Lisa and you got together and it was like you saw each other yesterday and you hadn't seen each other in many years. And I believe in that stuff. But anyway, so you asked, what was the question you asked? I'm sorry.
fitting in,
Fitting
fitting in.
in. So in a lot of ways, I feel like this has helped me to even more fit in
Mm,
because I feel like I get to be part of this community.
mhm.
I get to. I
So
don't
it's
have
defined
to.
more. Do you feel it's give, I didn't mean to interrupt, but do you feel in that respect, then it's giving you more purpose and intention?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I get to be the parent of a transgender child. I get to do that. I get to be the parent of a gay kid, that's a man now that wants to go see Broadway shows with me. That's like one of my favorite things to do. That's an actor that I act. I mean, I get to do that. Just like I get to go to games with my son who's really into sports. I don't. So that's to me how I look at the whole fitting in thing.
Love it. I love
Again,
it.
it's not about me. I get to do all this stuff and
No,
all these
but it's
different
the
experiences.
gift.
You know,
It's the gift that's been given that you get to realize consciously or unconsciously and run with it for the sake of all to benefit from. And that is a beautiful thing.
it really
And
is cool. I mean, and I don't just say that, by the way. I mean, it's like really,
no, I get it.
with everything I say,
No, and you get to be an example, Aaron, that wasn't something I think you consciously asked for, or that your kids were like, hey, Dad, you now get to be the example because of, how I was born. No, it's again, this comes down to consciousness and choice. Everything comes down to consciousness and choice.
when the Navy guy got in touch with me, and I mean, I told him some things that I don't know that he really was comfortable hearing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the truth. Like, it's not about you. I understand this is hard for you to hear, but it's not about you. And I'm telling you that because I love you, Yeah. So, if your son says, again, I don't know, I haven't met, all I'm saying is you need to respect what is being told to you. Because I can tell you that usually, especially with somebody like you, this has been going on for a lot longer than you're now being told. And I know your personality. You would not be an easy person to tell this to,
Which is ironic because my next phrase is ability to listen.
Listening is always something, believe it or not, it's always something I've struggled with because I have opinions. So I'm always working on listening. I think being a parent has made me a better listener because I think to be a good parent, you have to listen. So I think that in that context, being the parent of a transgender child has helped me to become a better listener.
And I think there again, it's a gift because I know from day one when I met you, and no different because I can relate to this, sharing thoughts and talking and whether you call it an opinion or being educated or because you want to share, you got a treasure chest overflowing of that. That's who you are. That's who you
I'm a passionate person. And Felicia, you know what I found? And a lot of people float through life like, whatever, I'll do, and I don't, that's like, what's the point? Like, I don't plan on that. And and I say this humbly, people tend to be attracted to that and inspired by it. And I'm finding my voice, again, I wanted to write a book for years and I finally did. And it's amazing that gives you a voice that people suddenly, something that you were already speaking about, were passionate about. And so suddenly people are like, wow, maybe this person actually knows something about it. No, I've always had these, and I want to share it just like you created this podcast so that you can make a difference for others. Right. Why, to me, it's okay. No time like the present to make that difference. Right. But to make a difference, you need to listen. You know, it can't just always be, it can't just be about what your opinions are, because then you're not hearing other people's experiences. And if you hear other people's experiences and bring your experience to the table together, you're going to learn something together, right? And through every experience, every conversation, you should learn something.
100%. Well, I mean, you know, being the profession that I've had for 35 years, that's what you do. Somebody's in your chair, and hopefully you're listening. It's not about, again, it's not about you. It's about them. In my humble opinion, like yourself, you know, as many times as I've been told to write books, the reason why this platform came forward was I get to take my life stories and my experiences, but bring it together with other people's life stories and experiences. And that's how we get to reflect, because I get to hear your story and how I can support that while sharing mine possibly in that moment, and how all of those stories then go out into the world and can positively affect others. So the ability to listen is something that, you know, I think being a child of somebody, a child of growing up during the era of lots of great talk show hosts, and their ability to entertain while ask questions and make people laugh and make people cry, but you got to learn something about somebody. I was that little girl at 3, 4, and 5 sitting on the edge of the television, laughing at adult jokes and all those things. And I, like you, am extremely passionate. And for some, that can, and I am humble. And even though that may not come off that way, I am. I mean, I
know you are, but some people are threatened by that.
Yes,
and they I've certainly found that professionally over the years in more traditional, you know, working in more traditional jobs or traditional firms and that type of thing. Interestingly, now that I've come over to the marketing world, I'm finding it that people, although people are still a little bit traditional, but that's getting off on a different tangent. But you know, we all need to I think if you're passionate, be willing to be passionate. And if you are, and you are yourself, you will inspire others. And if you hold yourself back from who you really are, you know, most people are very different with their friends and their families than they are, and those that they're comfortable with, right? Than they are in professional settings, whatever it might be, you know. And you know, I've kind of settled on, and I actually speak about this in the context of relationships and such. The best life you'll ever live is when you can be the same person you are with your friends and family that you are professionally, and all of those things, because then you don't have to hide from anything, you know, and that's how your greatest growth is going to happen. And that is what, to go back to the subject of our conversation, Leo, when coming into our room and saying, hey, guess what, guys, I'm not a, it was that matter of fact. It was really that matter of fact. There was no, I don't know if I want to tell you, or I've been struggling with it. No, you know, and clearly we've done something right. Like, you know, because it's okay to just be who you are. And we all need to be who we are. And
100%
scream it from the rooftops, you know.
And that brings me to this word, emotions.
Emotions, it's always okay in our house to be emotional. We tell each other we love each other 150 times a day. That's something we've always done. You know, so it's, as it created some emotions, yeah, probably, but we are such a family that deals with emotions anyway, that I don't really think that that's been any type of issue. The emotions that have come out of this have been fun.
So I wrapped up my conversation with Lisa around these 10 positive things your kiddo needs to hear every day. And I'm going to share them with you and hear your thoughts. You make me smile.
So how do you want me to respond to these?
So I'm just saying, these are 10 things that a parent needs to share with their child every day. And what do you think about, are those, does this resonate with you? You make
All
me.
right, so I get it. So first of all, I think that we should not assume that our children know how we feel about them. We need to tell them, just like with our spouse or our friend or whatever. And sorry, this just brought something up so I'm really into people and relationships and caring about others. And I am a very emotional human. And I tell my friends that I love them. And I don't care if you're a guy, a girl, I don't care who it is. I'll get off the phone and I'll say, I love you, man, before I hang up the phone. And, Bob Saget recently passed away.
Yeah.
And I am very into the Grateful Dead, and I see a lot of Dead shows, saw a lot of Dead shows. And due to that, I always knew that John Mayer was a great guitar player, but he's somebody I'd love to know in person because he's such a cool guy. Like, he's a good guy, like a really good guy. And this whole group of people that he hangs with are all just good guys.
Yeah.
Jeff Ross, they're all funny as shit, and they're good guys. So, what were we talking about? Bring me back to this.
It goes back to the 10 positive things you say to your
Oh,
kid.
yes. So you need to tell people how you feel about them. We need to tell our friends. We never know what tomorrow's going to bring.
100%.
Or tomorrow will even be there. So tell your kids, tell your friends.
The next minute.
And yes. So do I tell my kids I love them every day? Yes. Do I tell them in the words you make me smile? Maybe not in those words, but that sentiment and something special and nice to every one of my kids, including the one that doesn't live here in Chicago, every single day, and including my friends. And it was just reminded to me again through that how important those things are, and most of us don't do enough of it.
I agree with you. And the irony is the next statement is, I love you no matter what.
Yeah, that's just goes back to the unconditional with our friends, with our family, with our, we need to be unconditional, and not enough of us are.
100%. The next statement is, I'm here if you need me.
Yeah, that's something that's default in our family. Also with our friends. And it was interesting. I had COVID recently, and the outpouring of, if you need anything, I'll bring you a meal, whatever. And my friends actually did that. Like, so when it comes down to it, it's very real. And I know who those people are and those people aren't. And I'm certainly that way with my family.
I love that. The next statement is, I love being your parent.
Yeah, that's always there. That's always a sentiment that we live it. We certainly say it, maybe not in those words, but although I'm sure we've said those words, but there's that feeling in our home of warmth that clearly makes that clear.
I love it. I saw you doing your best.
So that's interesting. All that I have ever, and this has been something that I've said, I've used those words. All I expect you to do is your best. I don't care the outputs. I care about the inputs and the effort put into the inputs. If you get C's and D's, I don't care, as long as you do your best. It's not about the grades. Most parents, oh, if you didn't get A's, are you capable of grade? Like, have we even talked about whether you're capable, how they're teaching you, any of that stuff, or is all you care about? So it is very important to us that our kids know that we understand they're doing their best. It's also important that they know they need to do their best.
Yeah.
You can't just do halfway and expect to get the outcome, because there's the other people that are going to outwork you.
Yes, absolutely. The next statement is, you should be proud of yourself.
Oh, I say that all the time. All the time. I will never forget. It's so funny you said that. I will never forget my mother saying to me when I was very young, I could tell you I'm proud of you, but it doesn't matter. You need to be proud of yourself. Are you proud of yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember contemplating that and realizing that was and that was early in my life when she said that to me, but I remember it. It was like when I lived in my old house, and I didn't move from that house until I moved out of that house when I was 7. So it must have been said to me pretty early in my life. So my kids know how important it is that they're proud of themselves.
I think that's great. The next statement is, thank you for helping out.
So, we have the typical kids, teenage kids, sometimes we have to remind them what helping out is. But when they do help out, I make sure to thank them. But, we have a typical household of kids that will leave garbage on the counter, and it's, that type of stuff. But it's never on purpose, and the love is always there. So the feeling of love is always there, but but we're a pretty normal household as it relates to, helping out, if you will.
I love it. The next statement is, great idea.
Oh, we always this is a house where it's fine to bring up ideas. And it's, and you're going to, even if we're not going to execute on the idea, you'll still hear that it's a great idea. And, I'm not going to, a couple of weeks ago where we happen to live, there happened to have been a lot of snow. And so one of my kids is like, I want to build a snowboard ramp in the backyard. I'm like, cool, go for it. I'm not going to tell you not to, so I'm like, great idea. So, my parents may have said, oh, it's dangerous, don't do that. But no, with us, it's a great idea.
The next statement is, I like you.
I like you. Yeah, I think it's important that we like one another. It's so funny you bring that up, because I say to Lisa, I think a lot of parents don't like their kids.
No doubt.
They don't want to, they find reasons to not hang out with them. I like my kids. I like hanging out with them. I trust them. I don't hide stuff from them. I have an app on my phone, as do all of us. It tells all of us where we each are all the time. I don't hide where I am from Lisa or anybody else. I know guys that do. I was in group therapy. Okay. So I know the way that men and women and people often work.
Yeah.
So it's like, look, let's just be honest with each other. And we've raised a group of people to be honest and open with each other. And that's been working pretty well for us.
Yeah. Which the last statement is, I'm listening.
So yes, because this is a safe place to speak your mind. So therefore, you will always be heard and listened to here, because you know that this is a place where you can come with your thoughts. Again, when our oldest wanted to come out, that was safe. When Leo came out to us, it was safe. We were ready to listen. And it was clear that this was a place where you would be heard and be listened to, and where you wouldn't be shushed or silenced or told what your experience in life was going to be or has been up till this time. So, yes.
Well, this brings us to what I think for the moment is a culmination of an amazing couple of hours of conversation.
Thank you.
Listening to you share with me authentically, honestly, vulnerably, not because I think it's a struggle, because I think you just are this human being that I'm so grateful to have had this time with, that I'm grateful that you were willing and wanting to share your perspective of being a parent of a child who hasn't come out as a transgender, how helpful I believe that that's going to be for so many other people. And I think that one, I'm grateful, and two, I'm grateful that Leo has parents who are so in touch, who are so loving and so willing to grow with him, and the entire family grow with him in something that will continue to be an evolution of sorts. And I just love and adore you, Aaron.
I think I'm so happy you're doing this, and I appreciate this. I was thinking about and I've been thinking about maybe writing another book. And if I were to write another book, I was thinking about the experience from a parent of, kids that are different but aren't different. They're the same as everyone else, and society might perceive that they're different, but are they really? And how do you, and helping. So anyway, it's just kind of something I've been thinking about. So when Lisa said that you wanted to have this conversation, I was really appreciative that you were doing this, and I knew the importance of it. So that, for whatever it's worth, thank you for doing this. I so appreciate it as a parent as well as an advocate of the community. Thank you.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you. Listen, this has been a joy, a gift. I'm looking forward to being able to share it with the world. And I look forward to us being able to create more conversations, whether around this or other things that I think that we have pretty much a basket full of things that we'll.
I have definite ideas for us, and I also have ideas maybe for a couple of other people for you to talk with.
I look forward to that.
Very interesting conversations for you. So
I think that's terrific. And
you are awesome. I love what you're doing with this. So thank you so much for being you and for doing this.
I love you so much, Aaron. Thank you so much for sharing this platform with me, because this to me is like everything. This is to me what gives me chills and joy. And I just, I really feel like it's my truth, and my truth to help other people be their truth. And like, if this is my legacy for other people's legacies to be recognized, then I think it's like my mother who passed, who was like finally saying, thank God. She's really getting to be what she's here to be, because
amazing. I feel very much we're at a lot of the same. There's a lot going on in my life personally as well that's made me realize that everything was kind of leading up to now, and it's like, what can I do from here? And the sky's the limit, and I think for a while there, maybe I limited myself in here from what I was capable of. Sometimes it was based on who I surrounded myself with, and it was also based on just things that I internally didn't realize I may have been capable of, but again, it goes to being your authentic self to yourself and not hiding from who you really are,
Absolutely. So. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you didn't cut me off. It's okay.
No, I think it's absolutely true though, Aaron. We're both creatives. We both are passionate. We both have a lot of expression. And listen, as somebody who's always been known as an artist, a performing artist, speaking on my own terms about myself, and thinking I was going down this road, initially science and art, and then and also the performing arts. And as a woman trying to find my space and voice and place where I could be a leader and a visual artist and tell story, ironic, and originally as a filmmaker, and knowing as a woman how challenging that was going to be, sure. And knowing, right, and knowing also I had responsibilities and I was accountable for myself, and I had to pay back loans and all the things, and hence how I became the hair and makeup artist. And little did I know that was going to put me in a position of like, oh, now you're on the lower part of the ship. It's like, well, wait a minute, what? And it's not about because I think I'm an elitist or entitled, or, as some people I've worked with think they're the Downton Abbey of the world and they're the king of the ship. No, that's not my point. My point is I am a connector. I am a producer. I am a person who leads. And so to have to dim your light in those worlds has definitely, I see how it has, not because I still don't love it and I don't love what part I play in it.
No, but you're finding an outlet. You're finding your outlet, which is exactly what you should. I'm so happy that you're doing this. And let me know any other way that I can help you. I'm happy to be on. Again, we can talk about different subjects.
Oh, I want to talk about your book. We're going to talk about your book.
Well, send me. I don't think I gave you a book. Send me your address. I'll shoot you a book.
I will definitely do that. And we definitely need to off camera create a time to talk about all the other things that we want to talk about.
Absolutely. Let me know what works and let's come together for another conversation.
Okay, we'll do that.
All right.
I love you so much.
Yes, love you too. Enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of
You
the
as
weekend.
well.
Okay. Talk to
Bye
you
for
soon.
now.
Bye-bye.
Well, that conversation with Aaron Brooks was beyond a gift. I think that his willingness as a parent to talk about his experience and his family's experience as a father, as a family leader, as a family member, as a person in his community, and how he is advocating for his child and the betterment of the world ahead, for his child, as well as his children, as well as his family, as well as for the world, is just has been a gift to be a part of, being this vessel of connecting these conversations, of the importance of how we all are interconnected and how we are all co-creating this world that we're living in, and how we all have to be consciously aware of our choices, of how we treat one another, and how we're all in this together, that we don't get out of this on our own. And that I'm just so thankful that Aaron's awareness as a man, as a father, is in his position of being gifted these children, this child who has come out as a transgender, how it has gifted him an opportunity to do more for the sake of this community, and his advocacy and his activism and his just how he's showing up being as a father and as a parent and as a peer, is really an opportunity that's given him purpose and intention above and beyond what he's already known himself to be. So it's just been an absolute joy. I look forward to you sitting in and listening, not only on this podcast, but more podcasts that are coming. And thank you so much for being a part of this Camp Fifi Uncensored community, where the mission is that we talk about everything from soup to nuts, or what I like to say, from cannolis to egg and holes, and don't forget the s'mores. This is where people really get to authentically tell their life stories and share and reflect. And this is a platform where I think it's just super important to be able to have a space where people really can be their authentic selves, and be able to safely and with ease have a space where their stories matter, their voices matter, and somebody out there will resonate with it and needs to hear it and feel safe and feel connected. And I'm just so grateful for you to be able to be here and to be able to hear this conversation and all these conversations. And I look forward to you being a part of this community. Thank you so much for being here. Bye for now.